We are covering everything around starting, growing, scaling, and exiting a private practice, which actually, dipping your toes out of private practice is something that we're going to talk about today. And I'm really excited to because, after 799 episodes, we've covered a ton around the basics of private practice. But one thing that, we only here and there cover is side gigs, leveling up outside of your practice, building e-courses or being a guest on podcasts. I have this group called Audience Building Academy that you've probably heard about. We have a cohort that starts every 6 months. It's a 6-month milestone based program where we walk people through month by month what to do to build an audience to potentially grow an income outside of your private practice with all these skills you have. I'm really excited, though, to have my friend Melanie Benson, who has Authority Brand Amplifier for expertpreneurs. And she shows you how to stand out in a crowded market and attract high paying clients and opportunities. Melanie has a proven track record of accelerating results for her clients. Not uncommon to see 3 to 5 times revenue increases in the first 6 months. She's also the host of the Amplify Your Success podcast and is author of Rewired for Wealth and co-author of the best-selling Voices of the 21st Century and Entrepreneur.com startup guide to starting an information marketing business. Melanie, welcome to the Practice of the Practice podcast. I'm so glad that you're here today. I need you to unmute, please.
Thank you, Joe. Thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be a part of this amazing conversation that you're creating.
Yeah, it's great to have you here because you're such an expert on podcast guesting and multiple streams of income and leveling up. It's just I'm really excited to have this conversation and also to have a conversation with someone I've met in person. It's always fun to have hung out with someone and just feel a sense of their vibe, and it's just different when we're doing an
It
interview
is.
with people that are we've known each other for a while. So
Yeah, we've hung out.
we've hung out, we've had drinks. It's been great.
Yeah.
So let's just start with maybe what are some of the blind spots that therapists, counselors, social workers have in regards
Mhm.
to their ability to level up outside of their practice?
Yeah. I think like any expert you have an expertise as a therapist. You've been doing a body of work, you've been creating results, you've been guiding people through these transformational processes, helping them heal things they've been stuck with, probably for a lifetime. And I think sometimes in our blind spot is this you don't recognize how valuable that process or that thing is that you do, and maybe it's because you've been doing it so long. It's it's like the friend that you take for granted, but there are people who are searching for it and they're struggling with it, but therapy probably isn't where they're going to go looking. And so I think there's this whole opportunity, like what you're talking about with audience builders, to be able to take that expertise and package it in a new way and bring it more into the course creation, coaching modality and transform lives even faster.
Mm.
And that I think is such a golden opportunity right now. This isn't going away. Like, we're going to continue to thrive. And I have a therapist right now who we've been working on taking her modality and moving it into these online worlds. And it's like, I'm like, you have no idea how hungry people are for this. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there. And can I just share a second one that's kind of coming up for
Yeah,
me as
please
we're
do.
talking? And we may get into this more later. I think, there's some buzzwords these days: best kept secret, imposter syndrome, or imposter moments, depending on how you've heard that. And I think the other blind spot is, our minds form these stories about where we are in the world. And if you don't understand that this is like, you may be looking at all the people who've been putting out content for years. Like, I've been in business for 22 years as a coach. I have so much content. I have so many things figured out. And I often hear people, Joe, come to me and say, wow, okay, how am I ever going to be able to do that? I feel like I'm never going to be enough. Like, we can't compare where you are right now to where someone else is who's been doing this for a really long time, and let that be a measure of what's possible. Like, we have to recognize those imposter moments, or when you feel like you're doing all the right things and people aren't seeing you. It's just an opportunity to dial in a little bit more and optimize your message, your visibility strategy, and your client attraction methods.
Now, when people say to you, Melanie, you've been doing this so long, you've got so many tools. Why should I even become a coach, consultant, make an e-course? Like, why wouldn't they just work with you? Why, like, how do you help people reframe that to understand their unique value set?
Well, I'll share something I learned very early on. When my first couple years, I came out of the corporation model. Like I was working for a Fortune 500 company. I took coach training, and I'm like, boom, I'm just going to hang my shingle. Of course, people are going to just show up, and crickets. Nobody was coming to my work. And somebody said something to me. I started to get into that, like, I'm never going to get this right. Like, this is really hard. And I got really down on myself. And a mentor said to me, he said, "Look, there is somebody out there who needs your unique way of doing this, even if from your perception, you're doing it like everybody else." He's like, "You're not. Like, there are people who, like, there can be two coaches standing side by side, and one of those coaches is going to have a different energy and a different way of holding space and a different way of asking questions than you will. And that there's somebody that needs that." And so I think and I've seen this, like, I collaborate with a lot of people who do very similar things as me, but because their mindset, their experience, their training, the way they do coaching or mentoring is different than me, we'll attract different people, even though we appear to do similar things. And so I think if you just really dig deep and understand what your superpower is. And I teach something called building a golden bridge, and that's understanding the messaging, which is very hard for a lot of people that are good at what they do, right? They're like, but don't people just get it? I'm sure you see this all the time, Joe, where people talk about the process to get someone to an outcome rather than what that person is searching for, that client is searching for. When you really understand how to build a golden bridge, you start to recognize, oh, okay, yeah, people really need this. They're hungry for this outcome I can help them create. So maybe if I could just share like a shift that I went through to really like go from like starving and barely making $1,000 a month to building a multiple six-figure business practice as you call it. I literally had to change my mind about messaging. I had to realize it was my job to learn how to create a message that other people really understood, not just how I was going to get them there, but what was going to be better or different by going through my coaching process. So that was a little bit of a superpower. Sorry. And the superpower piece is the fuel for that. Because understanding your superpower is what makes you unique. What is it that makes you the standout expert or uh, coach, consultant, therapist, if you will, that people will want to work with.
Yeah, what should therapists notice as they go through that process? Because I think when I think about the average maybe person in next level practice or group practice
Mhm.
boss or even audience building academy, they'll say, "Well, I don't know. I'm just a therapist. I'm just like I do therapy and I'm good at
Yeah.
trauma or anxiety or
Yeah.
depression or couples or whatever. It's not a big deal. Like whatever. I just did the training." Like that would be their typical response. How would you react to that?
Yeah. Okay, so yes, that's exactly what my brain was going to in the beginning too. And so like if I'm working with somebody around their messaging and helping them design like an offering, what I do is I ask them. And if you've been a therapist for a while, you should start to notice that there is a similar process that you will take your most favorite patients or clients through. And when you look at that, not from a I'm in the moment just doing the work that I do, but really looking at what is my most favorite clients who get the best results. They do the work, they show up, they get results. They're fun to work with. Like they bring you joy. They don't just like drain you. And you look at like what is a common process that I'm taking them through that starts to reveal like where your superpowers are. The second leg of it is what do you hear over and over and over again from a client? Like, I'm sure there is similar feedback that they give you. And so one of the thing I like, we'll just take me for a second, and Joe, if you wanna share maybe, something that you've heard over and over and over again, like, that you started to realize, like, "Wow, this is making me unique." My clients would tell me, "You bridge the kind of the conscious, spiritual, like, transformation work and practical action-based tactics. So I can get both from you." So that was one of the things I started to realize, like, "Oh, so everybody doesn't do that?" Like, some people are just one or the other, and when I realized that my ideal clients wanted that, I was like, "Okay, I gotta make sure that's
Hmm.
part of how my clients who are searching will hear my uniqueness."
Yeah, even in my own work, over time, noticing the push and pull between slowing down and killing it. For a while, they would only see in consulting the speed side of it, and so a lot of my clients would say it's like drinking out of a fire hose. We get so much done in such a short period of time. But then, as we talked more about when they actually were successful, not just working with me, it was as we set strong boundaries around their personal time, that they were spending that
Mm.
time genuinely relaxing, genuinely slowing down. And then when it was time to work, it's like the pressure had built up and they just got so much done in a short period of time. And so that structure that I see in Slowdown School, that structure I see in Killing It Camp, and in Thursday is the New Friday, it's really that same structure over and over of aggressively slowing down and then aggressively getting crap done so fast.
Yeah. I was thinking of another one. I mentioned before, I have a therapist who's been a client for many years on and off. And as we were working on this new course that she was going to put out in the world and this training system, I asked her, I said, "So what is it that your clients just are blown away that you do?" And so she has a way to speed up the trauma healing and recovery process. Like, she had a process that she learned that was unique to her, and I'm like, "Then that's it." Like, that's one of
Mhm.
your unique factors that other people would find very valuable. So, anyway, like, I just think it's nice to hear different ways that people can tap into that.
Yeah. So one thing I teach, and I'd love to hear if you agree, disagree, if you would adjust it from the way you teach things, is that most of the time, highly trained people like master's degree, PhDs, they're very comfortable with building the product. And so they'll spend,
Mhm.
months or years building this quote perfect product, and then it'll be crickets. There's nobody that wants to buy it, or they don't know how to market it. And they've in a sense wasted all this time because maybe their people don't want an e-course, maybe they want a membership community or they want individual coaching. So what I tend to teach and that's where Audience Building Academy comes from, is build an audience and then survey that audience, talk to the audience about what they want. And so I always start with, let's build the audience, have a basic direction of your niche, but we don't need to land on, are you launching an e-course, are you launching a membership community, are you launching downloads? Like, let's just kind of build the audience first. So hearing that, like, how do you teach it? Do you have a different approach? Do you agree with parts of it, disagree with approach? Like, what do you tend to teach in that area?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I love what you're doing because I think a lot of people have been teaching the opposite, and it's setting people up for failure. I will say that I start with, somebody's goal and their priorities, and so if somebody is cash strapped, it's like, "Okay, I gotta make stuff happen right now." I'm gonna guide them very differently than if they're doing this as a side hustle, which is what I recommend. Do not do what I did, which is, like, leap and, like, try to find my wings on the way down and go, "Oh, well, this is not working. I'm gonna have to figure something out." So, that's the hard way, and I don't recommend that we put ourselves in financial stress. So what I suggest is similar. The audience first is where you start to work out what your message is. So I I found myself in one of my superpowers is helping people uncover their message. And I like to think of the message is like the magnet, and it's the message that stands out there as a part of your brand positioning, your client attraction, your speaking, and your whatever you're gonna put on a website, like any place you're going to be in front of potential clients or opportunities, your message is what people touch first. It's what gives them that first impression. So I say uncover a message that is so compelling. It lights you up. It like makes you passionate. It wants you to makes you want to get out there and spread it in a bigger way, or amplify it, as is one of my brand names. And then that will help you build the audience. And then you start to figure out, what is the audience hungry for from you? Right? And, I think there's so many different ways that we can design meaningful, powerful, transformational processes, whether it's a online course or, a hybrid type coaching with on-demand training, which is where I tend to lean. I do a lot of that these days, or for some people, they're gonna dive straight into what I call VIP or high ticket offers, where, instead of, like, booking yourself out with lots of coaching clients or therapy clients, you're gonna go right to developing some kind of immersive or, uh, accelerated experience that you can, offer to, like, premium clients who are willing and able to invest more to work with you farther. So, we have to find what's right for you, because what your audience will bear and what's the best way to deliver what your magic is, your superpower. So I love that methodology, and I think where people get screwed up is, yes, but I need cash now,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
I need to get some cash going to make all this work to pay for all this. And again, another changing insight that was given to me early on in my entrepreneurial career is, invest today in the business you want tomorrow.
Yeah.
We have to do the groundwork now to build something that's powerful and sustainable, and the cash will come. But if you jump ahead and try and put something out before you really know what your audience wants from you, you may spend a lot of time and money building something out that isn't going to sell. And that's heartbreaking. Not
Yeah,
that
and
I've
I
ever
think
done
that
that before, like 10 times.
well, and I think it's also then if you're focusing on just getting the cash, you're probably not gonna accept the right clients. You're not gonna have the clients that are
Totally.
gonna make the right referrals, and if they do make referrals of other people that aren't the right referrals, then you're gonna be stuck with all these clients you don't like working with, and so for
So
me,
true.
if I'm backed into a like I don't want to be backed into a corner to then say, "Oh, financially I have to take this client, otherwise I can't like pay for my mortgage or something." Like that to me doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel like I'm going to be doing my best work. Like I really want to be able to, whether it's one-on-one consulting or even next level practice that is super cheap, to be able to say like I want to be here in this session. I want to be able to have these conversations and hang out with these people, and I feel like I add value. So I want to shift a little bit into podcast guesting because
Mm.
we both agree that building an audience is important, and you and I both love podcasting. That's originally how we met, was through podcasting. So what makes a good podcast guest when it comes to being a professional? Like it's one thing to just try to be funny and just like just shoot the shit with people, but like what's a way that for you, like what goes into being a good podcast guest for therapists that want to position themselves to build multiple streams of income?
Well, let me just take a back step for a second and share how I got to realizing that podcasting was such a powerful platform for us for client attraction. I when I first made my leap from struggling from $1,000 a month to getting into a multiple six-figure business, what was working was when other people would invite me onto their stage or onto a teleseminar. Because yes, the OG method was teleseminars way back in the day, and it was like literally like turning on a faucet of ideal leads. I would stand on a stage, I would have so many clients coming, and I would be on a teleseminar. Literally that teleseminar, especially if it was archived and available, would bring me clients for years. And then I got to a point where I didn't want to be on the road. And teleseminars weren't really a thing anymore. And that's when podcasting emerged. And I was like, this is gold, because people are going to have you in their pocket. They're walking their dog. They're driving to work. They're at the grocery store, at the gym, whatever they do, they're tapping into content and getting inspired and learning. And you have a captive audience that is bonding with you when you are in their ear. Second, the other thing that happens for a lot of people is, where am I gonna find my prospects, right, Joe? It's like, okay, there's a gazillion things I could do. How do I get in front of them? Well, oftentimes, if you're guesting on someone else's podcast, you have a competitor or a colleague who serves your target audience inviting you to take to join them on their podcast, and you get to borrow their influence, and you're tapping into a very powerful lead pool. So I saw podcasting as a golden opportunity. And what happened for me was took my speaking career and learned how to have a conversation, and again, the messaging would always be the key piece of it. And that conversation, because I knew how to organize sound bites and stories and bring a compelling, inspiring call to action, people were reaching out hand over fist to work with me from podcasts. So, what makes a good podcast guest? Well, first of all, I'm going to tell you what doesn't make a good podcast guest: winging it. I can't tell you how many really talented, super smart people would come on my Amplify Your Success podcast, and they were kind of all over the place. They made no sense. They didn't have, I know you've probably had this a million times. They didn't have like a concise message, and it was like pulling teeth to get something concrete out of them. And I would ask them later, like, how'd it go? Did you get some great connections? Did you have some people reaching out? Did you get any more bookings? Like, no, it was crickets. It's like, okay, I know what's happening. People don't know how to structure the conversation. And what I think happens is we're like, I got this. Like, I know how to have a conversation. I can talk till the cows come home. But there's a difference between having a conversation where you're talking with a buddy or a friend and it's a natural conversation, and having a compelling conversation where you're intentional about what you're bringing into that conversation, so you give your best chance for someone who needs what you do to say, "Oh my gosh, I this is exactly what I'm struggling with. How do I get more?" And that's what I want. And what I think happens is a lot of people understand podcast guesting so hot. I'm going to go guest on a bunch of podcasts, but they don't have a framework of how to show up. And so they feel like it's a waste of time, Joe, and they're like, "Okay, I'm out. I'm not gonna do it anymore. It doesn't work for me." And it's just simply they don't know how to be a great guest. So, I have like a whole list of things that make
Yeah,
people
I
a
know.
great guest.
We could have
I don't know
a
how
really
much you
long
want me to cover,
conversation.
but yeah, we could go forever,
Well,
but,
I
you
think
tell me
one
what else you
question I
wanna
have,
know.
yeah. So one thing that in Audience Building Academy we talk about is having a playlist of like different stories or research or ways that you
Mhm.
think about
Yeah.
things. And before I share what I share, I would love to hear for you. What are some of the like essential things that people should be able to draw from in a podcast interview?
Love it. So there's a strategy I teach called seeding your credibility. And you're either going to get this immediately or you're going to go, "Oh my God, this feels so weird. Like, I don't like talking about myself." And I just want to acknowledge and honor that some of us have a harder time kind of boosting up our credibility. It feels funky or off for you. And so, the way I teach this is to find the most natural way for you to do this. So, there's different strategies you can pull from. A couple of my favorite are having a way to talk about what you do inside of a framework. So, for instance, we've been talking about messaging a lot. One of the ways I teach, or I will talk about it, is something called the ROCKS method. So, I have a framework that I use to teach messaging. ROCKS method is ROCS: relevant, outcome driven, credibility boosting, and specific. And I use this in all of my messaging strategies with my clients and in my own business. But that gives me a very memorable, specific way to convey something that can be complicated or have a lot of moving parts to it. And I can just do it like in one sentence, or I can expand on it and make it bigger. So I think that's one of the great ways to do this. And it's easy for you to remember because every time you give a talk, every time you're going to teach something, you're using that framework. And so it becomes like
So give us
imprinted
an
in your brain.
example. Give us an example of the rocks method in just like a sentence or two. Like, what would that look like if we're
Sure.
talking about how to amplify your message? Like, if that's the
Yeah,
topic, then how would break down what a rocks method couple of sentences would be?
sure. So relevant basically means what your and so let's take this. Let's say you want to be on podcasts. What happens is when you start pitching podcasts, you're pitching usually to get on great podcasts, and a million people are pitching to get on these podcasts. So we got to find a way to get your topic to stand out. So let's say, well, we'll just take mine because it's right in my head. I have a topic. How I'll take my one of my free resources. 17 mistakes that guest experts make that cost them leads and clients when being a guest on a podcast. So relevant, if you're looking to get on podcasts, you know this is for you. Specific at the end is 17. There's 17 mistakes that people are making. Outcome driven, well, if you want to avoid losing leads and clients, you know, okay, this is something that's going to help me. My rule of thumb is you got to have at least 3 of the 4 to really create a topic or a title of something that is going to be catchy. So some people are like, ooh, that feels weird. And so don't pick the one that feels weird, right? Like do the other 3. So that's one example. I'm working with a transformational coach right now, and we've been working on her titles. And she had some titles that were really great, but what was happening was if this wasn't something you were familiar with, her titles wouldn't make any sense. So we took her kind of her catchphrase, which is something that everybody also needs, is a few catchphrases, and we turned that into her title. And I won't remember it perfectly, but it's something like how to the ambition paradox, where high achievers get stuck and feel unfulfilled in the pursuit of success. Like, and so the high achiever, or sorry, the ambition paradox was where the specificity and relevance started to go in. So we're, that's another example of how you can maybe soften some of the specificity, but still really kind of bring something that's unique and reflective of your superpower. Is that making sense?
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's I mean, I know that we could just go on and on.
Yeah, we could do a whole
So
class.
oh my gosh, we really could. So when you think about maybe just a couple quick hit areas that if someone wanted to go from being adequate at being a podcast guest to being great or even good,
Mm,
adequate to good, here's like 2
mhm.
or 3 just like quick hit things that they could do right away.
Yeah. So, first of all, really do the work to uncover where your credibility is. So covered one, but like don't be shy about sharing what makes you a powerhouse. Like people want powerhouses. It helps them put you in a bucket called I need to listen to this person. And second, be organized. Some of being a good guest is what you deliver in the conversation, but a lot of it is what you do before and after. And if you are not getting your materials across to the host in a concise way, and you're not like getting them what they need, they're going to get frustrated. They're going to feel like they're chasing you down. They're not going to like want to put their best effort into the podcast. A lot of people don't realize, but podcasting is not an inexpensive endeavor, and the host is taking on 90% of that on their own. If they've got a sponsor, that might help offset some of it. So, do your best, like share it on the third thing is be organized and share it on the back end when it goes live. Like this is a really powerful media exposure. If you were on a TV show, you would be sharing it everywhere, right? Like, hey, guess what? I'm on Good Morning America today, right? And so it's the same with a podcast. So those are 3, there's a list, but be
Yeah.
organized, be organized, be organized.
Oh, so awesome. And Melanie, the last question I always ask is if every private practitioner in the world were listening right now, what would you want them to know?
Uh, I want you to like really like find a message that when you share that message, your heart soars. You feel like you're expanding the impact you have on the world. And sometimes you need some support clarifying what that message is. Get it. Invest in it. I spent 18 years trying to figure out my message on my own, and when I got some help, it was like I just felt like my wings like spread a million miles wide, and everything started flowing so much easier. So find that message, amplify that message, and know that the more consistent you are sharing that message, the easier it is to see you out there in a sea of people who share similar things in the world.
Mm. So awesome. Melanie, if people want to follow your work, if they want to listen to your podcast, where should we send them?
Yeah, well, amplifyyoursuccesspodcast.com is we're on every platform out there. So whatever you listen to podcasts, you'll find us, and we'd love to have you as part of our community. And if you're dialing in this podcast piece and you're thinking, okay, well, I want to make sure I know what to do well, and you'd like to start on that journey with me, I would like to share a resource with you all. It's a gift. It's, the 17 mistakes that I mentioned earlier that people commonly make. So let's find out what those mistakes are. Let's make sure I show you how to do it in a way that's more effective and strategic and allows you to feel confident getting your message out there in the most authentic and powerful way possible. So if you go to melaniebenson.com/practice podcast, you'll get access to that resource.